Howdy, I'm DiJaDi, and we are on Kick to do some research into the ABK acquisition, which is a hot topic today. Just as soon as we find out where iTunes went, we'll get started. I might have to go silent for a bit because I'm due to get a call from my mother at some point. We'll see how that works out. In the meantime, though, okay, here we go. All right. My computer does not like this many tabs being open at once. Let's do this, I think. From the outset, I think it's important to distinguish why I believe that this is a good deal. It's not about Xbox getting bigger, at least not entirely. And it's not about PlayStation losing. Essentially, what this does is it puts more games on more platforms and brings more competition to the market leader. Things which I believe are important in establishing a competitive field. We'll probably go through this last. A bunch of random stuff here, so bear with me. So where did this all start? Where did this all begin? On January 18th of last year, Microsoft announced plans to acquire Activision-Blizzard for an unprecedented $68.7 billion all-cash deal. That would essentially mean that Microsoft would acquire controlling shares and that the company would remain public. Now, if we look at let's do 2021. Shareholder report. Now that was publicly announced January, but clearly, well, this was the annual report, so actually this would fit in that timeline. I think that this information may have actually been disclosed during a recent court case. But as a brief overview, while we're looking through this, trying to find specific numbers, so essentially this was announced in January. The FTC pretty early on objected to it. Technically, officially in December, although I believe moves had already been made before that. And then the CMA, the Regulatory Body Corporate and Markets Authority in the United Kingdom, sought to block the deal at the end of May, beginning of June, give or take. Yeah, end of May. Oh, end of April, actually. Whoops. Now, regulatory bodies exist primarily to protect consumers, to prevent monopolies from harming the consumer base. In a pretty free economy, I would say, free market. You still need some kind of a regulation to prevent the exploitation of consumers. Do we have an overall profit finding? No? Like, geez, this is just a lot of nonsense. A lot of monthly active users, actually. We'll have to come back to this. What it looks like here. $7,885. What is this? 7663. Okay, so what it looks like here is consolidated revenue, net revenue, overall. Was around 8 billion, almost 9 billion, for the entire conglomerate of Activision-Blizzard-King. So when you're talking about buying a company for 70 billion, which would pay back in about 10 years, that actually doesn't necessarily seem as insane an amount. That's like getting like a 10-year house payment plan. And that's just in pure profit. That's not even counting the amount of other resources they could bring to bear to help fund some of that. Or the amount of resources they might save in the consolidation process. I'm sure there will be a bunch of redundancies that they'll need to eliminate. A bunch of programs that they'll be able to cut down on. And a bunch of expenditures that will no longer make sense. Like Activision-Blizzard-King using Azure cloud servers, for instance. For any kind of storage. Or even their Microsoft Word license. You know, I mean, like, it sounds silly, but all this stuff adds up. I think that's all the relevance that we're going to get out of this. At least immediately. I'm surprised that they don't necessarily have, and maybe they do. I mean, I'm not intuitively familiar with reading investor reports, right? So, I mean, like, it could be in here and I just haven't seen it. Okay, so FTC, CMA both went to bat to try to kill this acquisition. Both of them immediately tried using delaying tactics. This deal is due to complete by July 18th. Now, oh man, the way that they word some of these arguments is so slimy. It really is. For instance, a statement like this, where Microsoft has already shown that it can and will withhold content. When we're talking about withholding content, that's a definitively different thing than exclusives. Exclusives is already an existing part of the market. And what they're declaring that Microsoft is capable of here is something that Sony already does to an extremely disturbing degree. Between having like exclusive missions, exclusive characters, exclusive aesthetics and cosmetics, and an entire exclusive games. We also, in bringing up the FTC's complaint there, this might actually be... Oh, here we go. Perfect. This first site is actually pretty legitimate. As of 2019, not that long ago, Nintendo had 49.4% of the game console market share. Sony at a healthy 38%. Microsoft at 12.7%. Here's essentially what we're talking about here. Oh, that's fine. I wonder if we have more recent data than this, actually. Yeah, in the abstract, it's already talking about. Here we go. Okay. And let's open The Verge too. Because they broke a lot of stories about this. Wow. Is this true? Seems like a really insane disparity between this and this. I don't necessarily know that I... Oh, this counts console games content and console subscriptions. Alright. So that definitely changes things a bit. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to see Xbox numbers drop in comparison with PlayStation's without this acquisition. With this acquisition, what we'll see is a potential conversion rate of some of Sony's market share going over to Microsoft. Now, the number that was quoted in a recent court proceeding was 20%. But that number is essentially completely made up. There is no actual factual basis for that number. It is basically an assumption based on if you put certain entries into the corresponding fields. have to cut this off. Maybe. Okay, let's do this like we did for Twitter, because that worked for us. January. Microsoft. We can just say it announces the acquisition. Now, what did the FTC do here? Where is the administrative complaint? Why is it not attached to this? Some of these are wild. But we want to go back to December. This is just what we were just reading. Oh, there we go. All right, so proposed benefits for Microsoft acquiring ADK. let's go off of their words, not ours. January 2022. So we're going to have to go back a bit. Because they post a lot. I wonder if we can look for Activision. That might be easier. Okay, here we go. Proposed benefits are games as possible, Game Pass, expansion of cloud gaming, accelerated expansion. Proactive inclusion. Okay, so this is essentially their argument for why this deal is good. Now, going back to the FTC, let's see. Incentive to withhold or degrade content. I don't necessarily fully understand how they numbered these things. The first one is actually an argument. I could make a better argument than they did here. They did a lot of research in Call of Duty. Look at all these numbers. Like, everything else is just really, like, broad strokes, like a pretty generic summary. And they're like, okay, no, like, we really need to focus on Call of Duty here. Okay, so Activision's content system seller. That's essentially their argument. Mainly Call of Duty. This is wild, okay? This is insane. not only has Microsoft not really had a history of doing this in terms of like degrading game quality on other platforms or withholding specific missions. I mean, maybe like in the 360 days, but definitely not like in this generation or the last one. Or withholding content from competitors entirely. This is just so... The wording of this is so vague, so ambiguous. Because essentially, like, this could mean DLC, this could mean entire games. They're just purposefully using a broad brush just so that they can say, see, we were right. Conflating the difference between exclusives and DLC or specific in-game content that actively changes the player experience and degrades it is just such a ridiculous conflation. Those are not at all the same thing. First of all, those aren't at all the same thing. Secondly, Sony does both. Okay, I just had to zoom in and see. They spend a lot of time talking about Call of Duty here. Here they sneakily, like, just completely kick out Nintendo. Nintendo doesn't matter. We could get into all kinds of sneaky conspiracy theories here. Wait a second. Why do they not at all Why do they not at all mention PlayStation's own cloud gaming system? Sure. Okay, we don't necessarily need to get into the weeds on this. Oh, limited number AAA studios. I would say Epic Games kind of is a... I think they count as a AAA publisher. Is MLB The Show considered a AAA franchise? I don't necessarily. I mean, maybe. I guess. This is the weakest writing. Is reasonably likely to substantially lessen competition or tend to create a monopoly. You can't use reasonably likely to tend. It's like using maybe if, like... highly differentiated Nintendo Switch. By the way, if anyone wants to talk about this, I'm down to argue. Okay, let's get into the CMA's complaints here. And then we'll look at the Microsoft's remedies here. So, April 26th. Let's write exactly what they said. which it did, to be fair. In the CMA's defense, Game Pass did increase in price there. The problem is that the current competitive dynamics in cloud gaming are nothing. They don't exist. That's why Stadia failed. It's an emerging market. Let's make sure that this is correct. Oh gosh. Okay, let's see if we got it. Let's take a look at this. 2021, so a couple years old. Seems like a pretty in-depth report. Let's take a look at the methodology. They use average internet connection speeds to estimate the size of the user base. I want to know more about Newzoo's gamer segmentation. Essentially, it seems like a lot of this is based on assumptions. Maybe informed assumptions. That's interesting. The negative response to Google's move. This was before Google announced that they were completely dropping out of cloud gaming. But it's estimating essentially a doubling of the market. What is the B2B versus B2C? Let's find out. Yeah, this is a lot of technical jargon I don't necessarily care about. Oh, business to business versus business to consumer. Got it. Okay. Thank you, PC Mag. So a few of these services will actually use their services for other businesses instead of those businesses utilizing their own. Okay, that makes sense. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with this. I would say that probably the people who know about cloud gaming want to try it. I feel like those are probably pretty accurate numbers. I don't necessarily know what I want to see, what I would like to see in this report, and we'll see if it has this. And we're going on a huge tangential thing right now. What I would like to see in this report is for how long. What is the length of time? Because 2 to 3 times a week doesn't, like, there's a big difference. There's a big difference between using cloud for like 30 minutes 2 to 3 days a week and using it for like 6 hours every single night, right? There's a pretty substantial difference between those. Like, are we using it on our train trip to work? Or are we actually like staying up late in bed playing off the cloud? Why would they not include like some of this stuff? I guess like it's a common business terminology, so. Not most. I would say several. I would say an assortment of titles. Oh, here we get to learn about the segmentation. We've got the ultimate gamer, the all-round enthusiast, the community gamer, the hardware enthusiast, the bargain buyer, the time filler, the backseat viewer, the popcorn gamer, and the lapsed gamer. I would say I'm probably qualify as an enthusiast. I don't know. I spent a lot of money, so. Okay, so that was all very interesting. But we did not get into the whole reason we opened this report was, I guess, to ascertain its validity. Which it seems, I don't know, it seems pretty in-depth. But this also doesn't necessarily seem the... And a lot of this is predictions, forecasting. What I want to know, while we downloaded this report, oh, there's nothing to go back to there. Okay. They're estimating it'll be about 3% by next year. Let's say that the global gaming market. I wonder what the global gaming market is. Where's that notepad? We're gonna write down this number real quick. Cloud. Alright. 5.76%. Or no, I'm sorry, billion. Out of 245 million. We're just assuming these numbers because they don't really matter in terms of complete accuracy. We're just trying to get an approximation. I did do that. It's not what I want to do at all. Yeah, so we're talking like 2.3%. Now, you can make the argument, you could absolutely make the argument that cloud is its own individual market. And if you make that argument, you could also make the argument that Microsoft increasing their hold of a 70% market share of that market to something even higher, which arguably the Activision acquisition would do, potentially, at least to some degree, because of the value of Game Pass. Could result in a very difficult market to compete in. It's like if Borders was the first company to ever have the idea of, hey, what if we build a building and sell a bunch of books in it, and took over 80% of the market. it would be difficult for other companies to compete with Borders. Because arguably, through their massive supply chain, market share, and profits, especially from other ventures, they could probably undersell you. They could probably even sell at a loss sometimes. And it would be very, very difficult for you to compete with that. It's the Walmart problem, right? You could make that argument, but then you would also have to argue the same thing for Sony having 2/3 of the market of console. Because if the FTC wants to exclude Nintendo as not being a true 9th generation console, which is you could make an argument there. That also means that PlayStation has 2/3 of the market and Microsoft has 1/3. Which would basically be the same thing. So then, wouldn't you want to incentivize that person who only has 1/3 to be able to compete with the market leader? Okay, so let's go ahead. What? All right, let's take a look at this. on Tuesday. What day was this? February 3rd? So, January 31st. Okay. Let's see. This is actually kind of a win for everyone. The first part of this, I think, would have already happened. The second, I doubt. So, the UK, not the UK, the EU. Gosh, I miss when they were all the same. The way that I'm reading this, one worry would be that Microsoft owning games that they make available on other cloud services could potentially, and I don't think they would do this, but they could, when they own the company, when they own the games, I mean, they could potentially charge the user to be able to stream that game if they're streaming it on a different platform. Like, say, NVIDIA GeForce Now, or Amazon Luna, or whatever other platforms are available in that area. That is something that Microsoft could potentially do. And what the European Union here is doing is basically saying, no, you can't do that. Like, if they want to stream on a different platform, you can't charge them an additional fee for that. That doesn't mean that the game's going to be free. They'll still have to purchase the game. But they won't get charged an additional fee for purchasing it on, like, GeForce Now. And it is possible No, I think that's about it. Alright. Now, the other thing that actually probably was a real concern is that Microsoft would ordinarily charge these other streaming service providers a fee to allow their games to be streamed. This is why you probably don't see any... I don't know if there are any right now. I don't think there are any Microsoft-owned properties on PS Plus right now. Because PlayStation would have to pay Microsoft to be able to do that. Or pay Xbox, I guess, if we're going the whole parity route. So the EU basically said, no, you can't do that. Other game streaming service providers have to be able to offer your games without paying you a huge sum of money. Now, Microsoft will still get the profits, or a percentage of the profits, probably, of those games purchased on those platforms. but they won't be able to double dip, essentially. Which is a viable concern. And, like, this is the kind of stuff that I could see a regulatory agency actually looking out for, right? Okay. Let me search real quick. Here. Let's maybe go over to the Verge. Let's close some of this. This is as messy as my mind is. Actually, probably want to go back to this as well. May 18th, 23. I don't remember who they announced that with. What's that? One other interesting thing that I feel like didn't come up very often in this case is '06. Looking out into all of this is definitely a lot of work. What was Canada's arguments? I'm going to do a summary of all this when we wrap up here. So excuse the mess in the meantime. Okay. Let's see. Let's go back a little bit here. Gosh, I wish that the Verge was like better. I just wish that I could like sort by multiple pages, because I don't really care about the trial here. The hearing, I should say. It's not a trial. The hearing is absolutely something that can be looked up. where the FTC gives a lot of their arguments in detail. Microsoft responds in detail. Let's just look it up. Okay, June 12th. Here's the thing. December 7th, 2023 has not happened yet. There we go. What? That's not what I want. Let's try searching for cloud. February. Technically beginning after this. So. I'm gonna put this here, but it doesn't really matter. There's a lot that doesn't matter in this case. What was this? This was June 20th. Like, some of these articles are just wrong. And what was that? Wait a second. What was that? Oh, when did the CMA actually launch? When did the appeal happen? MS appeals. CMA. We'll say May 30th. That's close enough. Nah, I want confirmation of that. Hang on. Okay, yeah, May 30th. We're also going to look into this real quick. 20. That's trial. July 24th. Okay. The list of countries? Does nobody really know? Are we not keeping count? Hang on. No, what? That's terrible. Jeez. Okay. No, I want to know today's letter. Doggone it. Okay, hang on. Where is this quote coming from? Oh my gosh. Here we go. No. Why are we not linking to the statement? Am I really gonna have to go to Twitter to find it? Jeez. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, here we go. All right. I think that's just about everything. When was the TRO granted? Doesn't matter. Actually, it kind of does. No, we don't need that. No, we don't need that. Or that. Or that. Oh, I didn't even notice that. Okay. Okay, so 613. Let's see when that actually ends. By going for here. until midnight on Friday, this Friday. Yeah, so that article was completely wrong, actually. That seems like... seems like a long thing. Okay, the other thing I want to know. One other thing I want to know. I think we might have already covered it. Yeah, I think we have everything. Okay, cool. Alright, so one more time. So on January 18th, 2022, Microsoft announces the acquisition of Activision-Blizzard-King for $68.7 billion. Or is it 67.8? Hang on. Yep, 68.7 billion. Okay. The net combined revenue of ABK for 22 is about $7 billion. So it would basically take about 10 years to pay that off if you were not accounting for all the potential possible cuts and a whole lot of other stuff that I mentioned at the beginning of this stream. Microsoft's proposed benefits. Started off with as many games as possible in Game Pass, accelerated expansion of cloud gaming, and a proactive inclusion and creative autonomy of the studios within those companies. November 23rd, Sony responded. Obviously, pretty upset. That is 10 months after the announcement. And, more strangely, their response is published by the UK's regulatory body. December 7th, Microsoft announces a 10-year commitment with Call of Duty on Nintendo and Steam, having signed a contract with Nintendo, offered to Sony, and Sony declined. The very next day, the FTC issues their formal complaint. Clearly, Microsoft knew that this was coming. The FTC's arguments, as stated by them, but we are paraphrasing a little bit, are that Microsoft would have an incentive to withhold or degrade content, that Activision's content is a system seller, that these two things also strengthen Microsoft's position, especially through their vertical integration of being a platform as well as selling games, in addition to having Game Pass and cloud gaming. They also argue that competition may be inhibited in specifically emerging markets, but also console markets, and that Nintendo doesn't count. So essentially, that any market share that Microsoft gains takes away directly from PlayStation, thus hurting competition. Argument doesn't really hold water there. They also point out that there's a limited number of AAA studios, and they're worried about Microsoft acquiring one of the largest ones. Especially on the heels of having already acquired ZeniMax. So that was December 8th. Remember that date. January 31st. The EU sends a non-disclosed warning to Microsoft. Presumably, it's containing some of these same criticisms. Now, we'll get back to this because this is out of date here, out of order. But the EU does eventually approve with remedies. Now, the EU's arguments are Microsoft exclusives, withholding games from other platforms, and that the subscription and cloud market would be significantly impacted by Microsoft's adding so much value to their own. That their market share in these two areas would significantly increase to the point of being anti-competitive. You can make that argument. But the problem is that there's not much keeping other companies from investing more into these markets. And that's also presuming that they are actual individual distinctive markets and not additive parts of the gaming market as a whole. We'll get back to these remedies. February 21st, Microsoft announces a 10-year deal with NVIDIA. First of 4 cloud streaming deals that I was able to find. April 26th. Now, the week prior to this, there are rumors all over the internet that the CMA has actually swung in favor of the acquisition. But April 26th, the Competition and Markets Authority of the UK decides to block. May 18th, Microsoft puts Bethesda games on GeForce Now. Kind of holding to this deal here of putting, I believe their deal with the cloud streaming services was for PC games to be available. May 30th, Microsoft files an appeal with the competition. Oh gosh. The Competition Appeals Tribunal. See, I didn't even need to look it up. June 12th. After a week of rumors that Microsoft was going to close their acquisition of ABK. After a week of rumors of that, the FTC files a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction. Now, what's weird about this... Oh, we actually skipped May 15th, sorry. Okay, so... May 15th, by the way, EU has approved the deal by this point. A free license to consumers to stream available games on cloud streaming services, and cloud game streaming service providers also get a free license to stream those games to those consumers. What that means is that consumers essentially still have to buy the game or pay for the subscription service on whatever cloud streaming service they're using. But Microsoft cannot charge an additional fee to either the provider or the consumer. Now, this is actually probably a pretty good remedy when it comes down to it. Because those could potentially, especially that last one. The first one isn't necessarily likely, but the second one on the back end, I could absolutely see a fee being charged to providers to have and stream Microsoft games. All right, so back to here. June 12th, the FTC files their temporary restraining order in PI. This is the first legal action I'm able to find by them since December 8th. And the only reason it happens is because they hear rumors that Microsoft's going to try to close without getting them to approve it. Now, the way that the FTC works as opposed to the CMA, and this is all to the best of my understanding based on stuff that I've read, which has been a lot. The CMA has the power to block the acquisition. The FTC needs to first have a trial. And their trial date, they set out to August 2nd. Now, this date will also come in handy here. So, the temporary restraining order is granted for 1 month. New Zealand, a week after this, publishes a statement of issues. My guess is, and this is not necessarily wrong, but my guess is that New Zealand sees all these other regulatory bodies having issues, and they want to leave the door open to potentially attempt to have Microsoft offer some remedies to them as well. All right, so 2 days later, also the timing of this, probably not a coincidence. Could be a completely coincidence, but I think they're hedging their bets there. The FTC, with their temporary restraining order about to expire, starts their preliminary injunction case. This case yields all kinds of crazy, outlandish information that we had no idea about. Matt Booty at one point said that in 2019, I think, maybe 2018, he referenced killing Sony. We looked earlier at the various market shares. That clearly wasn't actually a practical reality, nor did it have any specificity in relating to this particular acquisition, or even potentially the ZeniMax one. We learned that before ABK, Xbox was also looking at acquiring either Sega or a number of other companies. We also learned that Jim Ryan never, ever thought that this acquisition would hurt PlayStation in a significant way. But all of that is kind of irrelevant because we're not arguing for PlayStation. The thing to remember throughout this entire thing is we're arguing what hurts consumers. What prevents a monopoly. Not what helps the market leader, but what helps the market stay competitive. So the market leader's opinion on all of this is largely irrelevant. And arguably, potentially, a conflict with him seemingly being echoed by other regulatory bodies and them continuing to espouse his arguments. Or, well, Sony's arguments. I don't want to put it all on Jim. Alright. So, June 29th, the last day of the trial, which has not gone well for the FTC. And the judge actually points out, like, why are you defending Sony here? The very last day of the trial, Canada writes the judge saying that they've found that competition may be lessened. However, their waiting period for approving a deal has already passed. They already let that lapse. My guess is that, and I haven't looked into Canadian law, but my guess is that they have X amount of time to be able to present those arguments. Also, on the same day, the Competition and Markets Authority tries to delay the trial that the CAT is approved and set to October 2nd. This trial was, again, due to start on July 24th. And the tribunal immediately denies that. Here we are on July 11th. This actually wasn't the final day of the trial. This was like halfway into it. July 11th, the FTC injunction is denied. And the Competition and Markets Authority immediately announces an intent to negotiate with Microsoft about remedies. Now, the FTC's appeal deadline is the 14th. And that's because that's when their temporary restraining order expires. July 18th is when the deal needs to be completed by, unless they extend it. It's the final date listed in the initial merger agreement. If they do not complete this deal by July 18th, Activision could potentially walk away with a $3 billion closing fee. July 24th is when the Competition Appeal Tribunal trial date was due to start. We'll see how these negotiations go. And August 2nd is when the FTC in-house trial date was due to start. Now, this deal was announced January 18th. The FTC issued a complaint December 8th. The CMA decided to block it April 26th. The FTC didn't do anything until June 12th, when they thought the deal was going to close despite their complaint and their trial not happening yet. And the CMA tried to delay the deal, which also, during this initial appeal, they also tried to delay it. They tried to delay the trial to October 2nd on their end. And when they were initially talking about it here, during the appeal, the CAT came back at them with, well, you have all your arguments still. Like, you're the ones who declined this deal. You should be able to defend your decision. The deadline for this deal was July 18th. It seems pretty clear to me that the main regulatory bodies trying to block this deal were trying to delay it past this date, because the further that it goes on, all this nonsense, all these court cases, I shouldn't call it nonsense. A lot of it is due process, but the way that all this was handled, to me, is pretty shifty. Because all this seems delayed in an attempt to have this deal fall apart on its own without actually having any legal arguments about it. Now, as of today, there are apparently 38 countries where the deal can proceed. And then we discussed a little bit of like market share and everything here. I wish I hadn't deleted those tabs, actually. I don't know where this... Some of these numbers seem wild to me. PlayStation having an 88% market share? Where? Worldwide? In 2022? That doesn't seem right. Not with Nintendo in the picture. Oh, just of consoles. No, that doesn't seem right either. Okay, so 65 to 35. I wanted that. Hang on. Okay, so looking at some quick numbers here. The PS5 compared to the Xbox Series XS has about a 2-to-1 lead. Sony, Nintendo, MS, in terms of gaming market shares, including subscriptions and game sales, the percentages are as follows. Sony in the lead with 45%, Nintendo with 28%, Microsoft Gaming with 27%. Microsoft holds about 60 to 70% of the market of cloud gaming, apparently. Owns Xbox, Windows, Azure, Cloud Gaming. Wait, no, we did not want that. Okay, over here. Oh, this is actually an argument for one of these. I forget which regulatory body argued these. I think this was the CMA. Yeah, this was the CMA. In terms of cloud gaming right now is about 2.3% of the overall market. There is no reason to believe that it'll eclipse 3% by 2024. It's still a really small fraction, basically, of the overall gaming market. Now, we are going to do the best possible argument for each side here. Starting with Microsoft. And this is my argument, not necessarily theirs. I kind of almost want to start with the negative, but yeah, you have to start with a positive argument. So, This deal is a good thing. Because essentially, right now, Microsoft is in a distant third place, and Nintendo isn't really playing the same game. Ultimately, PlayStation is the market leader, and continues to not adapt with the current market trends. Instead, they continue to engage in pretty anti-competitive tactics to try to force everyone else out of business. Now, on one hand, that's business, right? That's what businesses do. Every business would be happier if their competition did not exist, right? Every business strives for a monopoly, because then they can do whatever they want. The issue that we're in right now is that that's essentially what PlayStation is doing, or trying to do. Ultimately, the fact that we are losing a AAA studio that used to be independent, that used to have the ability to put their games on any system, doesn't change the anti-competitive nature of PlayStation. It also does change and allows Xbox to move up to a level of being able to compete with PlayStation, thus potentially forcing them to be more consumer friendly, to make changes that benefit consumers as opposed to changes that maximize profits. Because when you have two directly facing consumer-facing businesses, consumers will choose the one that most benefits them. So, being able to put Activision games on Game Pass, potentially day and date, being able to put these games also on PC day and date, on cloud streaming services day and date, to have more gamers being able to play these games, to insist upon these games having at least some measure of crossplay. And that's not getting into the whole fact that Activision's culture as a company has been pretty bad, and hopefully a Microsoft acquisition would change that, shift that, both socially and in terms of work ethics. That hopefully also Microsoft's policy of giving their studios creative autonomy instead of forcing them to work on specific games and forcing them to not take risks. Hopefully Microsoft's antithetical approach to managing game studios, as disputable in terms of efficacy as it might be, will benefit by increasing the variety available in the market, despite there being less independent studios. Now, The anti-competitive argument against this acquisition lies in a couple different parts. Okay. The anti-competitive argument is that putting games on a subscription service would inherently lower the value of them not being available on a competitor's subscription service. That them being available on Game Pass would mean that more people are incentivized to buy them on Game Pass, thus decreasing the viability of alternate platforms. The other argument is exclusives, but that one is kind of nullified by the fact that exclusives are part of the game, for better or worse. And at this point, Xbox has to play the same game. They can't take the moral high road and continue to be in third place in the gaming market as the market leader, who has doubled their market share, continues to utilize these tactics to try to run all its competitors out of business. So exclusives is not really a viable argument. The degradation of games on alternate platforms, or keeping certain content in certain games on certain platforms, withholding that, is not a viable argument. That's not something any studio has shown a vested interest in purposefully doing. And when it comes down to it, is kind of absurd, because obviously the market would object to that. Obviously that would hurt the studio and the publisher, in this case Microsoft, thus decreasing sales, thus nullifying any kind of gain potentially attributed to that. The Call of Duty argument doesn't really work because Microsoft has promised to put Call of Duty everywhere. It'll be on more platforms, not less. And so PlayStation's refusal to accept that deal is ultimately up to them at this point. At this point, and this was a huge part of the trial for the preliminary injunction, the Call of Duty argument is that it essentially would be unprofitable, or not as profitable, let's say, to keep it exclusive. And yet the other exclusive games argument doesn't really work, because PlayStation and Nintendo both have significantly more exclusives than Microsoft. So the only real viable arguments against this merger are the one I already mentioned, where more games on Game Pass could potentially upset the market share. The limiting of a number of independent studios being able to choose which platform they put games on. And essentially, this whole cloud market argument. But the issue with the cloud market argument is that mostly is about investiture. That's because Microsoft has invested a certain amount of resources into that market that other companies have not. And when you're talking about an emerging market, that's only 3% of the overall, less than even. To limit someone's ability to invest in that market inherently destabilizes the viability of that market as a whole. So ultimately, I think that this is better for consumers because it allows Microsoft to compete more directly with PlayStation and present more of a threat to their market share. Yet, I don't think in any way, shape, or form that this is enough to upset Sony's lead. So we'll see what happens. Let's go ahead and check one more time. See if there's any updates. Doesn't look like anything. I do think that the CMA is kind of scrambling right now. Their argument just was significantly weakened by the FTC's being defeated. And right now they have to roll the dice. They can either hold the line and essentially hope to win this appeal, which the appeal being granted in the first place and the trial not being delayed does not necessarily lean in their favor. Or they can negotiate now and get what they can to try to protect consumers. But these regulatory agencies arguing on behalf of Sony, using Sony's direct arguments, just doesn't sit well with me. There are absolutely legitimate concerns to be had about any consolidation of any market. This being a vertical integration makes it a little bit different. But there are definitely still potential concerns. However, the concerns represented here by the FTC, the CMA, and even the CCB are pretty weak and pretty badly represented. They come off as defending Sony's market share instead of protecting consumers from exploitation of a monopoly. And I think that's problematic. So we'll see where this leads, but we might end up seeing a lot more games on Game Pass. And thus more playable on more platforms for less cost to more gamers than ever before. And I think overall, that's a pretty significant win for consumers. Now, if I only had a PlayStation, would I be a little upset that there will be some exclusives? Sure, absolutely. But I would still have the option to play them. Maybe not in my ideal setting, but I would still have PC, which was almost not at all mentioned throughout this whole process. The argument being that a PC is $1,500, which is A, not even close to remotely always true. B, the PC is a multi-purpose device, which a lot of people already own. And C, you can also play via cloud on a PC. Or on phone via cloud. Or on any of these multitude of devices coming out that have cloud gaming. So if I didn't have a PlayStation and I wanted to play an Xbox exclusive, or I'm sorry, if I did have a PlayStation and I wanted to play, let me start this over. So if I only had a PlayStation and I wanted to play an Xbox exclusive, without owning an Xbox, I would still have a number of options to do so. And I can't necessarily say the same about PlayStation exclusives. Either I need to drop $70 on them, including in addition to buying a console, or I have to wait some indeterminate random amount of time, possibly up to 3 years later, where it might actually eventually come to PC. I think that a lot of Xbox's current policies are very consumer friendly. But I think that also has been a result of them being so far down in market share that they've needed to make drastic moves to increase their competitive ability here. And overall, competition is healthy. I truly believe that. And I think that this will lead to more competition, not less. But time will be the only one that can tell us for sure. With that, I think we're gonna go. Thank you so much for joining me in this extremely dry research stream and listening to me ramble for a bit. These do a great job at holding me accountable to actually looking into matters rather than just forming opinions that are completely uninformed. And hopefully they help you do the same. As always, safe travels.